There used to be a billboard along Highway 74 in North Carolina that showed a picture of a woman who had been badly beaten, lying in a hospital bed. If I close my eyes, I can still see that image. Both her eyes blackened, her cheeks bruised, her lip split and swollen. The billboard was part of a campaign to end spouse abuse in that county, and its intent was to provoke an emotional response from the people who passed by. It worked. The first time I saw that billboard, two equally strong emotions welled up within me. One was pity for that horribly battered wife, and the second was rage for the husband who had done it to her. Is it possible to feel two equally strong emotions in the same soul at the same time? To feel pity and rage mixed together in there? And if it is it possible that sometimes Jesus felt that way too? In this episode from Mark 1, Jesus is approached by a leper who says, "If you choose, you can make me clean." Most of the ancient manuscripts say that at that point Jesus was moved with pity for the man. But some of them, and just a few of them, say that in that moment Jesus was filled with rage. Rage? Really? Is it possible that he felt both as I did when I saw that billboard? Did he feel pity for the victim and rage for the perpetrator? I suppose it is possible, but who perpetrates leprosy? Who was Jesus angry with? Was he angry with God, as we sometimes are when we don't know who else to blame? Was he angry with whoever it was that gave leprosy to this man? Or was he angry with the whole situation? With the whole infuriating chain of events that could turn a healthy human being into the pitiful creature now kneeling before Jesus? Because there must have been a time when the leper was not a leper at all. We can't really reconstruct the story of his life, but from the detailed descriptions and prescriptions in Leviticus 13, we can get a pretty good idea. There it says, when a person has on the skin of his body a swelling or an eruption or a spot, and it turns into a leprous disease on the skin of his body, he shall be brought to Aaron, the priest, or to one of his sons, the priests. Could have been that simple. A boy could have come home from school, or from doing his chores, or from playing with his friends on the Galilean hillsides. His mother could have fixed his supper and listened to the story of his day, but then later when she was washing behind his ears, she may have noticed a spot or a swelling. "What's this?" she would ask. "I don't know." "How long has it been here?" she would ask. "I don't know." She would watch it carefully for the next few days, but when it only seemed to be getting worse rather than better, she would bundle the boy up as you would to take him to the doctor. And instead she would take him to the local priest. "The priest shall examine the disease on the skin of his body. And if the hair in the diseased area has turned white, and the disease appears to be deeper than the skin of his body, it is a leprous disease. After the priest has examined him, he shall pronounce him ceremonially unclean." The priest would say, examining the boy at arm's length, covering his nose and mouth with his prayer shawl. "This looks bad. This looks very bad." And finally he would drop the shawl and look at the boy's mother with sad eyes, knowing what his next words would mean. "This boy has leprosy," he would say. He is unclean. And then, according to the law, there was only one thing left to do. Reading from verse 45 in Leviticus 13, the person who has the leprous disease shall wear torn clothes, and let the hair of his head be disheveled. And he shall cover his upper lip and cry out, unclean, unclean. He shall remain unclean as long as he has the disease. He is unclean. He shall live alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. And so it was that a boy who would have been a very ordinary boy, with friends and family and maybe even a dog, would become a leper. And move to the hut his father would build for him on the outskirts of the village, eat the meals his mother would bring to him night after night, but other than that, he would be cut off from the world of the living, cut off from the life he had up until that moment enjoyed. A leper. To be fair to the book of Leviticus, those laws had been given to keep the entire village from becoming a leper colony. In those days, what they called leprosy was thought to be highly contagious, requiring the quarantine of those who had it in order to keep it from spreading to everyone else. The problem is not with the book of Leviticus, but with what happens to human beings when we give them the authority to determine what is clean and what is unclean. They begin to draw finer and finer lines, to make more and more laws. In a book called Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time, New Testament scholar Marcus Borg writes that by the time of Jesus, the religious leaders of Israel had become obsessed with the idea of cleanliness. They had as their guiding principle the words of Leviticus 19:2, "You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." Holiness, they believed, was God's defining attribute. And for them, holiness was separation from anything that was unholy, anything that was unclean. So while your mother might have said cleanliness is next to godliness, the religious leaders of Israel would have said cleanliness is godliness. But what is clean? And what is unclean? And who gets to decide? The answer, of course, is the religious leaders of Israel. And in centuries of making these kinds of distinctions, they had come up with an elaborate purity code to determine who was in and who was out as far as God was concerned. According to Borg, those who were in were typically pure, righteous, healthy, rich, Jewish, and male. And those who were out were impure, unrighteous, diseased, poor, Gentile, female, or any combination of the above. Not surprisingly, those who were most pure were those who were most like the religious leaders themselves. And those who were least pure were those who were least like the religious leaders. Do you see how it makes a difference who gets to make the rules?